Good afternoon, everyone. Many of you may be aware that today, June 12th, is World Day Against Child Labor. This day usually brings together governments, people from across the globe to discuss the situation of children in labor and how we can help them at large. Today, we've got a very interesting panel, and we're here to discuss the way forward for our country, which, as many of you may not know, has about 50 lakh children in labor and has the world's largest population of children in labor. We have an interesting panel, and I'm just going to introduce them to you. We have Anshul Tiwari, who is the founder and editor-in-chief at Youth Ki Awaaz. YouthKiAwaaz.com is India's largest online platform for young people to express themselves on social issues. The website currently receives over 6 million hits a month and is read by over 1 million readers. Anshul has also been a United Nations awardee as a young innovator for innovation in crowdsourcing. We also have Divyanshu Singh, who is an invaluable team leader for the Cry Delhi Volunteers Group. He's a software developer at Oracle, where he's been project leader for 8 different projects of Oracle volunteers. Academically, he's done a BTech in computer science and engineering from IIT Roorkee. He's also established the Cry chapter of volunteers at IIT Roorkee. So he's really an invaluable member of the Cry family. Another one of our panelists is Komal Ganotra, who is the Director for Policy Research and Advocacy at Cry Child Rights and Youth. Komal is really an expert on child protection in India, and she'll be able to help us understand the complexities of child labor in India, what the situation is like, and be able to give us a lot of insight on what we can do both at our own levels as well as at a policy level, and what needs to be done in terms of implementation. My name is Yogita Verma. I'm Director for Volunteer Action at CRY. Before we actually get into our discussion, I'd like to just tell everyone out there that we're going to be taking questions in the second half. So if you have any questions, please send them in to us at hashtag Open Your Eyes on this page, or even you could even send them to Twitter at CRY India, and we'll take the questions in the second half. I'm going to start with Komal. Komal, could you give us an understanding of the situation of child labor in India? How dire is the situation? What, in your opinion, needs to change in the country if we want to ensure that no child is ever in labor ever again? What would you really say are the primary things that we need to focus on?
Thank you, Yogita. I'll start with a broader situation in terms of what data shows us. The most appropriate data we have is from the Census of India for 2001. It says that around 12 million children in India are involved in labor. Of these 12 million children, around 1.2 million children are in the hazardous forms of labor. Hazardous forms of labor means the forms of labor which have a bearing on the health of the child, which have an effect on the development of the child. There have been subsequent figures in 2004 and 5 and again in 2008 and 9 which have been conservative and lower, but evidence from the ground says that it is around 12 million, and we are still awaiting the 2011 census figures even after 4 years of the census. The problem is grim. The problem is really huge. Huge in the meaning, in terms that the amount of children that are visible is quite low. We'll have many more children across in non-hazardous employments and hazardous employments which our census has not been able to cover. There is a form of informalization of labor where children are working with families, they're working without going to schools, with going to schools, so numbers are huge. Additionally, we're seeing there is obviously a violation of rights with these children working. But what is more important is also that a lot of these children are exploited in many different ways. A lot of them are actually facing child sexual abuse. A lot of them are being beaten. So it's a child protection emergency with perspective to child labor. So child labor is just not child labor; it's an emergency. It's a child protection emergency, whereas a child is very, very vulnerable to any form of abuse and exploitation. What can we do? In terms of policy, in terms of what should India be doing, there are a lot of things that will have to be parallelly done in terms of intervention. One, everybody has to make child protection one's business, which means if we see child labor, we should be reporting child labor. We should be telling the stakeholders that you need to do something about it. That there is an importance in terms of enforcement of the existing law. We had the right to education, free and compulsory education in 2009 and 10, but we've not been able to amend our law in terms of child labor till 2014, with the sense that children below 14 years have to be totally banned from child labor, which are still allowed under the child labor law. So yes, we need to somewhere to an amendment to the Act. Along with the amendment to the Act, what also needs to be done is somewhere a very strong enforcement system to the Act. Right now, we do not have mechanisms in place for the enforcement of the Child Labor Abolition and Regulation Act. So a quick amendment to the Act, which bans all forms of child labor below 14 years as well as above 14 years in the 14 to 18 age bracket, is something that India needs to do quickly. One important thing that as CRY and as I think a lot of child protection organizations we've been thinking is, if we really strengthen our education framework, if we have the Right to Education Act in place, apart from that, the quality of education, the infrastructure of education in place, the children who are into labor may be going into schools. I think if the education system becomes stronger, a lot of issues of child labor may be addressed. Another issue is livelihood that really pushes these children into labor. So again, the whole livelihood situation in rural India needs some kind of a strong social security measures that really need to be addressed in India. I think that's a little brief, and as we go on, we could discuss it further.
Thank you so much, Komal. That was really insightful. Also, I think just understanding that there's so many different factors at play, and it's not as simple as just saying that, stop child labor today. It's actually looking at every aspect of a child's life and working on it across the different, aspects. Before we move on to our other panelists, what I'd like to do right now is just take you quickly through our campaign on child labor, which is starting actually today, and it's going to be on for the next 2 months. The campaign is called Click Rice, Open Your Eyes, in association with Philips LED TV, who's supporting this campaign. The whole idea behind Open Your Eyes is we see children in labor everywhere around us, children in tea shops, children and signal, and often we are inured to their situation. It just becomes part of the background. It's something we don't even notice, because in India, with 50 lakh children who are in labor, it's almost a part of everyday life. We take it for, it's something we stop noticing. And really this campaign is about bringing together experts, youth, eminent photographers, children themselves, children in labor themselves, and saying, can we, through different media, through debate, discussion, through photography, through social media, start discussing the issue and look at some of the policy, the legislation, and the implementation, and say, what is it that we need to change? What are the recommendations that need to be made to change the situation in a permanent manner, not in a stopgap manner? This campaign is going to go on for the next 2 months. Some of the main planks of this campaign are, the first one is we had a consultation day before yesterday on the 10th of June. And there we had some of the leading child rights experts in the country come together and actually talk about what needs to change both at a policy level, what needs to change at the implementation level. We also invited a lot of youth in to actually talk about what they can do to change the situation. At a personal level, what is it that every family needs to do to make sure that children are never in labor? What we're also doing is we're conducting photo workshops with children who are actual child laborers to understand their lives. This is a way to ensure a right to express themselves, to understand their hopes, their aspirations, where they'd like their lives to go. We also have photo shoots by eminent photographers and photo enthusiasts or volunteers who are going into different communities to understand what are the reasons that children go into labor, what is it that pushes them into labor, and what is it that we can do. The public at large and all of you out there can really support this campaign. You can go to our website, www.cry.org/openyoureyes. Look at some of the pictures which are being posted. Some of those pictures have been taken by children in labor themselves, by eminent photographers, by volunteers. Every time you click on a picture, you actually pledge support. You can share those pictures on Facebook and inform your friends and family. By spreading awareness, you actually make people question whether it's okay to either employ child labor or look at children in labor and be okay with it. slowly creates a movement of people questioning and saying that this is not right. Um, what we've also another thing that you can do is you can actually call in on 011 660 32837 and leave a message saying, if I were Prime Minister for a day, what would I do about child labor? Some of the best answers out of the messages that are left, we're actually going to go ahead and share with government. The list of things that we're doing for this campaign actually keeps going on, and a lot of this is coming from our young volunteers across the country. We have a really inspiring activity where we have Ujjwal Chauhan, who's a student at IIT Kharagpur. He's actually cycling from Calcutta to Bombay across 4 states, 2,500 kilometers. He's documenting the situation of children in labor across these 4 states. He's uploading photos on our Facebook page and Tumblr every single day, and you can comment on those. You can share with your friends. You can actually go on to BitGiving because he's using this as a way to raise funds for to prevent child labor in India. So there's a whole bunch of ways that you can get involved. All of this entire 2 months of campaign will culminate in on-ground photo exhibitions across 5 cities towards the end of July, early August. There'll be exhibitions in Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, Bangalore, and Chennai. And that's one way that people who are offline can also go and have a look at what people have shared. At the end, all the recommendations, all your pledges, all the photos will be put together as one dossier and given to the Ministry of Labour and to other duty bearers to make sure that this is a campaign that actually ensures action, that the recommendations that we make at a policy level, for the kind of implementation that's happening of policies and programs can actually be taken forward. So really the invitation to everyone out there who's watching this Hangout or who's a part of this Hangout is please get involved, please call up the phone line, please go on to social media and participate. Yeah. I'd now like to invite Anshul to really understand Youth Ki Awaaz's role in the campaign, as well as get his perspective, because Anshul's best placed to do this, really get his perspective on how youth can make a difference to the situation of child labor in India.
Right. Thank you so much, Yogita. First of all, for having me on the Hangout, and second of all, for asking a very pertinent question. To answer the first part of the question, how Youth Ki Awaaz is involved in this campaign and in general in raising awareness about the issue of child labor in India. We've taken a pledge ourselves to definitely try and target this issue as much as we can and try and bring in more and more youth opinions and drive youth opinions around the issue of child labor. For us, we've broken down the campaign in two parts. One is the awareness bit, where we're trying to reach out to millions of young people and tell them how important and pertinent the issue of child labor really is and how important it is to raise their voices against this issue. And the second bit is where we're trying to tell that same audience and build a community around this issue to engage them and try and find out solutions from the people, crowdsource solutions on how they think this issue can be resolved. So as you mentioned in the brief introduction to the campaign, that people can call up a number and they can tell what they will do if they were the PM to resolve the issue of child labor. So we are also encouraging them to do the same and trying to see how we can get as many young people as possible to talk about this and to also tell us how they can resolve the issue of child labor. That's the a part where we're trying to engage with the campaign. The second bit where you asked how young people can in general be involved in the issue of child labor and help resolve it. There are multiple things that young people can do. One, of course, is to, in our everyday life, all of us definitely come across, child labor. We come across child laborers in front of us working at dhabas, working in different shops, working in different places, in communities, at construction sites. And the first step that we need to take is the intervention, the first level of intervention that we need to make and understand why the child is working there and what we can do as individuals to eradicate that issue from that individual's life. Definitely the second step that any young person can take is spread more awareness about it, because as I was talking about to one of my colleagues yesterday also, that young people or anybody in general does not usually wake up one day thinking that today I'm going to fight the issue of child labor or today I'm going to fight XYZ issue. What we really need to do is inculcate this as a value in our generation, inculcate this as a principle in our generation to not let child labor happen. and that will only happen if we as a collective, if young people as a collective spread a lot of awareness about the issue, talk about it more openly, not turn their eye when they see a child working at a dhaba or at a construction site or at any other shop, and try and create more and more interventions when we see something like this happen. Beyond the interventions as well, it's extremely important for us to have these discussions more and more as much as possible in colleges, in schools, at places where we've never really talked about it. Also, one more thing that I'd like to point out is that when we're studying in school, we're shown a particular kind of a world which is very comfortable for us, which is the kind of world we grow up in, which is full of luxuries, full of amenities. But we're not really exposed to the other side of the world as well, where people of our age, children of our age, while we're in school, are not as lucky to go through that entire same process that we go through. So I think it's extremely important for elders as well to tell children that while they are having access to such luxuries, there are people of their own age who don't get to play in the fields, who don't get to study, who don't get to talk about different issues, different things that they face in their life. And as we grow up, we definitely need to take a stand to make sure that the future generations don't go through this. So I think young people have a very big role, and to put it very succinctly, I think two things that we can do is spread awareness and talk more about it as much as we can.
Thanks so much, Anshul. I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying. Really, I think the biggest action starts with yourself. And if we start in our own families, young people, older people, we start questioning the situation around ourselves, there are ways that we can start making inroads. I'm now going to move to Divyanshu. Divyanshu, I'd really like to ask you, firstly, if you could share some of your experiences as a volunteer. And then if you could talk a little bit, taking on from what Anshul had spoken about earlier, what changes do we need to bring in our own behavior, in our own attitudes and practices, if we want to bring some kind of impact on child labor? Over to you, Divyanshu.
Hi, thank you, Yogita. Once, okay. So, hi, thank you, Yogita, for asking the question. So, basically, during many of our campaigns, we noticed that ignorance and lack of knowledge were responsible for child labor in many cases. So, we did a study on knowledge, attitude, and practices of potential employers of children, and we tried to figure out how important knowledge and attitude and practices were in basically propagating child labor and continuing child labor basically. So I would like to go through the some of the important figures that we observed through the study, so that you can get some knowledge of and how it drives child labor. So what we did was we went to 9 different districts of Delhi, and we did a exhaustive survey with sample size of 1,575, and basically the people involved in the survey were volunteers from different backgrounds, and we noticed mainly 6 things. I mean, there were many things, but I would like to point out 6 things that we noticed primarily. So one was knowledge of who is child among the potential employers. So we targeted 2 potential employers. One was dhaba owners, and another was owners of auto garages. And so we targeted 6 major things and about knowledge, attitude, and practice. So first was knowledge of who is child, and we noticed that 13.1% respondents in New Delhi and 7.7% respondents in Central Delhi considered an individual below 18 years to be a child, and only 35.4% respondents in New Delhi and 37.6% respondents in Central Delhi considered an individual in the age group of 14 to 16 years as a child. So you can see that very few people, only 13.1 and 7.7% in these 2 districts, considered children below 18 as child. So rest of them used to consider, and only 35.4 and 37.6 considered 14 to 16 years of age children basically as children. So rest of the more than 50% population, more than 50% employers basically considered children as people below age of 14. So basically this was one striking figure that we obtained. And another thing that we noticed was knowledge of restriction on working hours of children as per CLPRA. So CLPRA has some provisions for hour for recreation and resting for children who are at work. So we tried to figure out how many, how many employers, such employers, were aware of the restrictions imposed by CLPRA. So our findings were that uh, more than half of the respondents across Delhi considered that a person below 18 years of age can work as much as or even more than those who are above 18 years of age. So this was again a striking figure. And then we noticed the practice of those employers towards remuneration for child labor. And we noticed that more than 30% respondents in Delhi said that people below 18 years of age should be paid less than those who are above the age of 18 years. So even the children are even not paid proportionately to their to the work they deliver. Another thing that we noticed was attitude of the employers towards ease of handling children at work. And we found that more than 60% respondents said that if the person working in a garage or restaurant is below 18 years of age, it would be easy to handle them. This indicates that children are used not only as a source of cheap labor, but also because it is easy to handle them. Another point was attitude towards, escaping from any accident happening to children at work. So here we noticed that around 76% in East Delhi say that a monetary compensation needs to be paid to the child or the parents or guardians of the child. So this gives an indication that in case of accident of a working child, one can get away from punishment by just making some monetary compensation to the child or the parent or guardian of the child. And finally, we noticed about knowledge about the law dealing with child labor, and we saw the figure as across districts, more than half of the respondents were unaware about any law pertaining to child labor. In South Delhi and Northeast Delhi, more than 30% respondents were unaware about any law pertaining to child labor in specific. So all these figures basically show that there is a lot of lack of knowledge across current employers of children, and their attitude and practices toward child labor is leading to sustenance of child labor throughout the years. So what we feel is intervention to stop child labor has to largely to do with legislation, regulation, incentives, and disincentives. And though legislation have had an impact yet, what we need is basically to have zero tolerance towards child labor. If every individual will have zero tolerance towards child labor, then we as a whole community, as a whole nation, will be able to eradicate child labor. So uh, this is my view about how youth can play a role in basically eradicating child labor. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Divyanshi. Shocking statistics over there. I mean, just to hear that people are okay employing, that it's almost exploitative in the manner in which they're looking at it. Beyond cheap labor, it's also about how much you can manipulate and mold a person who's much younger and therefore get a lot more work out of that person. I think that the key message I got is that it really needs to start with every one of us. And I think that really hits home very hard. I'm going to now start with the questions. We've had quite a few questions come in during the course of the Hangout. The first question goes to you, Komal. The question is, how can we reduce child labor happening around us? Whom do we contact for proper action if we see child labor?
See, I'll divide the question into two perspectives. How do we reduce child labor? We've talked of education, strengthening of education. We've talked about each one of us taking our business in terms of child protection. So if you see child labor, one thing you can definitely do is intervene yourself. You could talk to the child, you could talk to the employer. A lot of times these are employers were very ignorant, and they may hear you and be ready to act. In terms of reporting, suppose you want to make a difference and you want to report in terms of the appropriate authority. As per CLPRA, the Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Act, the Labour Department is the enforcement department for the said act. And therefore, you could put a written complaint or an email to the Department of Labour of your district. Always mark your complaint to the district magistrate, who has the overall authority in terms of the jurisdiction. In a lot of cities, there is a helpline called Childline with the number 1098, which is again a helpline which is facilitated by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India, and therefore you could call 1098 and report the child working there, who are then supposed to take it with the Labour Department and other mechanisms. Also, in a lot of cases, accessing the Labour Department, if you find it difficult, I think you could just put registered letters to them, because the registered letter is a very authentic medium where you have an acknowledgement. The act is non-cognizable, means the police does not take cognizance in itself. But if you give a written complaint to your local police station, also in the local police station, if you check who is the juvenile officer posted there, and specifically mark your complaint to the juvenile officer in the local police thana, he is also supposed to act, mark the complaint to the Labour Department. So the major three stakeholders who are basically responsible for intervening in a case of child labour is the Department of Labour, is the district magistrate, and the police, which could be the three reporting authorities for you.
Thank you, Komal. That is really useful. My next question goes to Anshul. Anshul, we have a question. Somebody asking, how can we, through a campaign, actually influence the urban middle class to stop employing child labor? That is domestic help. Is there something we can do at a campaign level?
Sure, I think as I spoke in the last bit also, that the first and foremost need that all of us need to fulfill is to talk about it amongst our circles, because we all, and people who have access to the internet who are watching this hangout, I'm presuming they're all from urban middle class backgrounds, and we're also the highest number of people employing children at our houses and homes. And I think the first thing that we all need to do is intervene with our elders if we see it happening in our own houses, or with our neighbors, with our people living in our colonies and apartment complexes. And we need to talk about it more openly. We need to tell them that there are laws which prohibit them from employing children. We need to tell them that the impact that their employment of a child will have on the child is quite terrible, and how they're contributing to a massive epidemic that's going on in the country. And after this intervention, I think we need to take a step further ahead and make sure that we're talking more and more about it. So I'll come back to my point that I stated earlier, that what we need to do as an intervention within urban households is definitely go and talk to them, talk to the people who are employing children, talk to our own. If we see a child in our own house, I think we need to step up and talk to our parents or our elders, on why they've employed this child, and how we can make it better for the child and not employ children as house helps.
Thanks, Anshul. Very useful input over there. I'm now going to ask Divyanshu. Divyanshu, you've done a lot of work in actually speaking with communities and engaging with them and encouraging children to go to school. One of the questions that come in is saying that how can you interest children and their families in education? How can you ensure that they realize that education is the road to take and not child labor? Are there any practical inputs you have to people who are maybe encounter children in labor and meet their families?
Yeah, most of the times we observe that children say that they are able to get sufficient money out of the child labor that they are doing, and they don't need to study. But we can make them aware about the prospects of earning in future, and we can let them know the exact figure that if they continue to do what they are going to do, then their future won't be highly bright. I mean, it is not going to be that. I mean, their own children will also be have to be employed at younger ages, and so we need to make them aware that there are opportunities. I mean, beyond what they are doing. So and with education, they can explore those opportunities and earn a lot more than what they are earning right now. And yeah, that alone won't be able to drive them initially. So maybe we can have creative ways of basically imparting education and basically doing things which can basically excite them to study, and later on as they grow up they will begin to understand the things that we wanted to make them understand with respect to prospects of earning more in future with education. So yeah, this can be an approach to do that.
Thank you. But clearly what you're saying is it's a slow process and you have to kind of handhold and work with the family over a period of time. It's not a quick thing that happens that you can just walk in and enroll a child and stop the child labor situation.
Yeah, so over the period of
Um,
time, it will be inculcated, yeah.
okay. Komal, we have one more question on policy. Basically, they're saying, can we make an amendment to the law saying children below the age of 14 years should be given free and compulsory education as the current law? Instead of that, if you make it children should have compulsory education up to class 8, free and compulsory education, do you think that will make a difference?
Just repeat the last part of the question.
Saying rather than making it about the age, which is 14 years, make sure every child completes 8, like up to class 8.
Okay.
Would that make a difference?
See, if you go
If
to
you
the
go to the
spirit of the Right to Education, Free and Compulsory Education Act, it says 6 to 14 years, but it also says that 6 is not the limiting age. The government is committed and guarantees education to a child even above 14 years if he has not completed elementary education. So even the existing act in itself very clearly says that age is not a bar. The elementary education is compulsory. So if a 16-year wants to study, then RTE will have provisions of such special education to ensure that a 16-year-old can complete his elementary education. So what you're asking is actually already there in the law. In the spirit of the act, this is built in. That even a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old can avail the provision of special education in terms of training support, special training support to have elementary education.
Okay, that's very useful because I think most people think that after 14 years you really cannot do much more. So that's very useful as an input. We have one last question. Just a second. Sorry, one second. One last question. Just getting it up. Give me a second. The CLPRA Bill 2012 safeguards adolescents from hazardous occupations and processes, but by declining him or her the status of child, denies the child the right to education. There's an innate conflict there, and what are your views on that?
Again, you're saying there's 14 to 18 is adolescent.
The CLPRA bill safeguards adolescents from hazardous occupations, but by declining him or her education, you're denying the child the right to education, basically. So there's between the CLPRA and the Right to Education Act, there's an innate conflict. Is the question?
See, this is the first time that the amended bill has linked education to labor. It clearly says that a child is a person who has complete 14 years of age or a person who has completed education under the Right to Education Act. So one clear reality that the new bring this is the parallel between the two acts. But yes, there's an issue for children between 14 to 18 because we have termed them adolescents under the said amendment bill. Now, as soon as we say adolescent, it does not align with the other laws in the country. For example, the Juvenile Justice Act calls children up to 18 years. The UNCRC, which India has ratified, calls children as 18 years. The Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. So somewhere we think we a lot of civil society organizations and CRI has a very clear stance saying we do not want a section called adolescent because yes, there will be a lot of children above 14 years who are into education, and tomorrow there's also a possibility that like we have elementary education compulsory, we would want to have secondary education compulsory. So we want all children up to 18 to be called children and not to be called adolescents in any form. Right now, it does not contradict with the existing Right to Education Act, but from a policy perspective, all children up to 18 years should be termed children, and we strongly advocate that the right to elementary education should be increased to right to secondary education and education for all children up to 18 years.
Thank you, Komal. I'd just like to get, I'd like to get some closing comments from every one of the panelists. We've got many more questions coming in. I think what we're going to do is we're going to take these questions and take this conversation further. This hangout is not limited to just a 45-minute engagement. It's really about saying that if you have questions, if you have specific situations of children, if you have further action that you want to take, start the dialogue. We're here, we can answer questions. So please go ahead and send in as many questions, comments, queries that you have. I'd just like to one by one get closing comments from every one of the panelists. Any closing thoughts? I'll start with you, Anshul.
Sure. Yogita, as I said,
Anshul,
yeah, I can hear you. So as I said in the previous segment as well, I think the only thing that I would want young people and people in general to do is not hush away the conversation around child labor, talk more about it, and make sure that when we see it happen, we definitely intervene because that's the first step towards bringing any kind of change.
Okay, thanks so much, Anshul. Divyanshu, any thoughts? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, so I would like to basically emphasize again on the same thing that yeah, we should have zero tolerance towards child labor, and yeah, we should make sure that I mean there should be sufficient employment for opportunities for adults so that children don't need to get involved into child labor. So these are two things I would like to emphasize.
Thank you, useful. Komal, any last
Couple of
comments?
points. To me, this fight against child labor has to become a movement. We've been doing campaigns here and there. We need to really pull all energies of people and organizations together to take it to campaign. A voice that is magnified to reach the government. I think every sector, if it's media, if it's corporates, if it's child rights organizations, if it is individuals, we need to come together. We need to create a voice that really compels the government to act. Very strategically, for example, if there are RWAs, the resident welfare associations can do it for the people in their apartments to say, ensure, please don't employ a child below 18 years. If it is schools can talk, have a dialogue with parents and say, please don't employ children below 14 years. If there are corporates for themselves, for their own employees could have small child protection trainings and say, no, at least we as an organization, each one of us commits to it. Maybe these bigger malls, commercial areas where each one of us goes has this commitment towards the fact that we will not tolerate child labor. The fact that we take it so easy, it's fine, this child will not have an alternative, he doesn't work at my house. All these small myths that we've been taking along and allowing children to work is a great deal for our future. We need to end it today. And I think that would be my message. If each one of us pulls, I think we can make a change.
Thanks, Komal. Really wise words. I think really it comes down to how much every one of us does. And the examples on the RWAs and malls saying that we will not employ child labor. And as Divyanshu said, zero tolerance to child labor. I think that's really where it all starts. I'd like to just close by inviting people to join in the campaign. Please visit Youth Ki Awaaz. Call in the phone line. The number is 011 660 32837. Visit our Facebook page. Go on to cry.org/open your eyes and pledge your commitment. Start acting on behalf of children. If every one of us does whatever we can, we really can make a difference. So really the invitation is to join in. Young people, of course, but if you can bring your entire family, old, young, children, everybody, if we can commit to ending child labor in the country, we can go very far. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.